Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Do You Mind podcast. Today, I have a very interesting guest. He's actually my old world geography teacher, but I believe he's a school principal now, if I'm not mistaken. His name is Mr. Daniels or Christopher Daniels, whatever you prefer to call him, depending on your age. Mr. Daniels, would you like to introduce yourself for us, real quick?
Yeah, my name is Chris Daniels, and I'm a school superintendent over at a charter school there in Corpus Christi.
Corpus Christi. That's a long way from Alice.
Yeah, it's a 50-mile drive for me every morning, so
Oh,
a
you
little bit
commute.
different. Yeah, I drive every day. As long as I hit pass through two railroad tracks without getting impeded by them, I can make it in 50 minutes. So it's not too bad. But my first couple jobs, I didn't have to travel at all. I lived in Agua Dulce, and then I traveled to Alice, which is only a 10-minute, 12-minute commute. And then I was the principal over here in Agua Dulce for 6 years, and literally, I start my car and I would be at the school. I mean, so for I guess about 14 years, I never really had to commute, and then the last 4 years, I'm starting to make up for it.
I'm actually super curious because you used to be my teacher at one point. And from a student perspective, we always think our teachers are just like robots. Like they show up to go to school and then you never see them out in the real world again. So
Right.
I would love to hear, I think all my old classmates from Alice High School would love to hear how the story of Mr. Daniels originated. So let's take it all the way back. Let's take it all the way to the very beginning. How was your childhood, so to say? What era did you grow up in? Like 70s, 80s?
So I just turned 50. So I was born in 74, and I'll be turning 51 here in March. But I grew up in basically the 80s. What I really remember is the 80s, and there's kind of a total different time frame because of lack of technology. But it was kind of the beginning with Atari and Nintendo and those kind of gaming systems where those were just starting to come out. Computers were just starting to come out. Is before internet, so it's kind of a totally different, frame in history, right? Lack of communication, not being able really to communicate was really, really interesting. So it was, I grew up in Washington State. And on the eastern side, we're actually used to having four seasons as opposed to Texas, where it's hot and hotter. And so we were, I went snow skiing, I went water skiing. We did all those kind of activities growing up. We were, the kind of neighborhood I grew up in was a very nice middle class neighborhood, mostly a white population. But I had a friend who was Hispanic, and I didn't know he was Hispanic. I just called him Miguel because I
Mm-hmm.
thought, he was just Miguel. I never thought about it, right? So race was never an issue growing up. Where I lived, I didn't know people had racial problems. I didn't understand that because I just saw people as people. Then, as I got older and educated, I kind of understood why there were problems and different people's points of view. But it was just a totally different time frame. Music was different. Movies were different. Just all of that. And so that's kind of how I grew up in the 80s. Had a couple brothers, and my parents, they divorced right around 84, and we lived with my dad. And so yeah, we're just into athletics. We had a strong work ethic. We started working from an early age, and doing chores, and didn't get paid for chores, but we had to go earn our money outside of the house. So
It sounds
yeah,
like you had a strong structure system from an early age. Was that mainly because of your father, or was it like a team effort between your parents?
it was a team effort between my parents. Both parents were loving parents. He had a Christian background. We were raised in church up until I would say till about 12 years old, and then we kind of stopped going. But we still had that foundation of God in our upbringing. So it
For
was
sure.
that was an integral part of growing up, was our faith, and then also the family structure. Even though my parents were divorced, we were still very close. Me and my brothers were close with both of our parents. So
Did the divorce ever affect you growing up?
yeah, it affects the nuclear family. It affects like how you're living and who you're with, meaning like mom or dad. But we did the best we could, and my parents ended up remarrying around 1990, 1991, and then they moved on with their lives. And by that time I was 16 to 17, and we accepted our my stepfather and my stepmother, and so they just became part of the family, but their own family, right?
For
So
sure. So I'm curious. I think everyone from my high school is curious about this. What was Mr. Daniels like in high school? Was he a good kid, A's and B's, or was he one of us in the classroom? You know what I mean? A little rambunctious.
I was actually really quiet. I didn't have to. I was disinterested in school,
Hmm.
and back in school where I was at, it was mostly lecture based, and very few times, did you even know that you were missing assignments and those kind of things. I mean, technology was still just kind of coming, into fruition, so to speak. So you think about 34 years ago in 1990, and I'm 16 years old, and they had the old paper grade books. And if you wanted to you wanted to find out what your grade was, they would have to go and calculate your grade manually. And then 60-40 split, 60% exams and 40%, daily assignments or whatever. And so it was almost virtually impossible to keep up to date with whatever grade you had. So you either were going to be a very good student, or you're just going to be kind of lost in the weeds, kind of going through the shuffle. And the kind of high school that I went to was grades 10 through 12. So when I got to grade 10, you were really the low man on campus. It's not, say, some of the schools that are around here where as freshmen you came in and it was shock and awe, like all those freshmen were so bad, and everything else, right? This was the opposite. This was freshmen, sophomores were trying to acclimate into the school, and you didn't want to do anything to bring attention to yourself. So you had to go through initiations and those kind of things, but that was part of the rite of passage, right? And you looked up to the upperclassmen. Over here it was a lot different, where kids would act out, and there was so much shock that an eighth grader or ninth grader would do something so outrageous that the pendulum was on the other side there, right? So it was a little bit different. As far as an athlete, I was so athlete, not in the basketball. I mean, not in the football, but I was in the basketball, but I was never good enough to start on, like starting varsity or anything like that. I was pretty solid. I went out and played, on the playground with guys that were mostly black guys, honestly. And they put me on their team, and I gained a lot of respect on the court like that. But when it came to playing like in high school, it was different. I wasn't able to accelerate into basketball. But the weird thing is that my brother, I had an older brother, and he was the super jock, right? Like he was the guy of the whole high school. Like he was big, he was strong, he was into football, and he's into wrestling. I mean, he excelled at everything he did. I never got picked on when I was in school because everybody knew who my brother was. So I virtually walked around like there was no issues whatsoever, right? And and then as far as athletics go, probably around my junior years when I figured out that I wasn't going to make the varsity basketball. So my senior year I didn't play, but I was good with that. I was only I mean, I think I was 5'11" and 150 pounds, 153 pounds. And so I wasn't like tall, but I was reasonably, I only had like 4% body fat. So I was really thin and lean, but I wasn't like, I could jump up and touch the rim, but I could never dunk, those kind of things.
I,
But
I feel that.
uh, I was always, a pretty good athlete, but I already knew right off the bat that I didn't have what it took to play like high school football. I didn't have that speed or that strength or whatever. And at a certain point, you kind of have to become possessed with what you want to do. If you're that determined, that wasn't me.
That
Like,
wasn't me.
no, that wasn't me. I knew where I was at. So what happened was is I turned to work, which means when I was 16, I got a job and I would work like, I don't know, 25, 30 hours a week. And so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday that was my days of work. And I would work from like 4 to 9, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday it would be like 4 to midnight. And then Saturday it was all day, and then Sunday it was mostly all day. So I got used to that idea of having a good work ethic and going and earning something. And then by the time I was a senior, maybe a junior, I paid for like a $9,000 car out of my pocket, you know, and that felt really good because I worked for that, and did it all myself.
That wasn't cheap back then either. That was actually a pretty good amount of money.
It really was. And the thing was is I bought a little Honda Civic, and it was a little 5 speed.
Classic. Mexican's
Yeah,
favorite. Hondas and
yeah.
Nissans. You can't go wrong with that.
That's it. Yeah, it worked out, pretty good. I had it for years until I joined the military, and then I sold it, and then got another car when I was in the military. So
So I'm actually curious at this point because you mentioned a few minutes ago that you
Mhm.
weren't not interested in the school system. So how did you go from not being interested in the school system to later becoming a teacher and now principal to superintendent?
Well, it really came. It was two parts. One, when I was doing the work in a school, meaning like in grade school and then junior high, high school, I didn't really see what, like, how to do the work. I didn't understand how to do the work. Like, I could read a book, but I didn't understand how I was going to be tested on what we took on it. And so we didn't necessarily get a lot of assignments either through worksheets or whatever. I swear, all I remember is like kind of like the Charlie Brown, uh, teacher. "Ah, wah, wah, ah, wah, wah, ah, wah, wah." Like, just that's all I remember.
Hmm.
So I don't remember group work. I don't remember, like projects. I don't remember any of that stuff. And so then when I did have to do work, I felt like I was really on my own, trying to figure it out. So what happened was is I just basically developed a work ethic when I towards school, is when I got out of when I got into the community college. I was pretty afraid, honestly. I was afraid that I was going to fail, and I remember going, man, I wasn't the best student, right? So I decided that I was going to study and work my butt off in a junior college, right, over at Coastal Bend College. And so my first semester, I got straight A's, and then that was kind of an indication, like, oh, I can do this. And then, but then you start getting into some upper level math classes, and a little bit more difficulty in those kind of things, and maybe whatever your weak point is. And I was always looking to say, like, man, this isn't going to work out. Like, this is going to be hard. I was always looking at my next obstacle, but I was just able to knock those obstacles down. I just kept going. I just kept going and just kept trying. And I always had a good sense of writing and reading. I was always a good writer. I just never really had a lot of practice. And so when it came to college, it just came like pretty naturally to me. And but I tell you what, the main thing is with college is just attendance and participation.
For
Those,
really is.
the colleges, they need you. Like, they need you to go. It's not like where they say, well, if you don't do this, you're going to fail. I mean, no, they need your money. They need you in attendance. So
Yeah.
it is a cooperation. It is a cooperative effort. So if you are determined, you can do it, but you have to go. So when I went to Coastal Bend College, almost all of my whole class, I remember this, my whole history class was full. And the reason why is because in the beginning of the year, everybody got a Pell Grant, right? And if that Pell Grant for low income students, you would get your college paid for, and then you get a little extra over. And it wasn't even it didn't even enter my brain and not going back to class. Like, you go to class, you start your course, and then you would finish it, right? And then next thing you know, people started weeding themselves out, meaning by life, or they weren't determined, or whatever it was. And eventually they failed, or they had to take a different route. But it really all came down to just discipline of, I got to go to class. That's really all it came down to. Whether they had the mental acuity to attend, do the work, I'm sure they did, but they didn't have the discipline to stay. And I think that was the thing, that where the determining factor. They were looking for the short term gratification of having money in their pocket. And if you burn the government, especially when it comes to, by not showing up and, failing the course, you generally don't get a second chance. And they might give you one chance, but they're not going to give you a second one, or very often. So I never really had that in mind of not going. So I just kept going, and I just kept doing. And next thing you know, I had my associates, and I milked Coastal Bend College is for every course that I could possibly get that would transfer over to my bachelor's degree over at Kingsville.
Mm-hmm.
My brother gave me some good advice, my older brother. He told me, I told him, I was like, I really want to go to the university. And there was a slight embarrassment, to be honest, to go to Coastal Bend College, because it's kind of, academically
For sure.
speaking, it's like, eh. But my brother told me, he said, you're going to get whatever you make out of, Coastal Bend College. So if you're in 1301 English, you just do the very best that you can in 1301 English, and just do your best and work your butt off, right? Get up early, stay up late, do your assignments, those kind of things. And your professor, which is, over there at Coastal Bend College, is going to grade you, or is going to give you some type of finishing grade, and then you can go over to the university and spend all the extra money to get the same grade that you're going to get there at Coastal Bend College,
You're just paying
and
for
that's
a
the
name
part.
on the paper.
You really are. I mean, it's not like you're going to Yale, or Harvard. I mean, you're going to a college, right? And most of it is just you putting in the work. And like I said, I wasn't the strongest at math, but I got up at 4:30 in the morning to go over to do college algebra, and then do, samples and examples out of the solution manual, and then also to read Spanish, because I had to take two Spanish courses. I never took those before. I mean, I couldn't even count to 8 in Spanish. I got to siete, and I was like, no sé ocho. I don't know. Like, it was it was not computing.
I'm Hispanic.
Uh,
I don't even speak my own language. It's pretty common these days, unfortunately.
right. So that was my thing, is I just worked at it. I mean, I got up early. I put in a work ethic. I would, make time to pray and meditate, read the Bible in the morning. So it was, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30, 2.5 hours of all of that before you even get out the door, before you go to class, or before I, went and got my one of my jobs or whatever. But it was a lot of work for those in those formative years in at Coastal Bend College, and over at Texas A&M University Kingsville. It was like I said, it was a lot of work, but it was worth it. And while I was going to school, I also had the GI Bill, so that helped supplement my income. But on top of that, I had like two or three part-time jobs, so I was able to kind of just work, where I could, and then earn some money, and you know, and then be able to make it those 4 or 5 years into get my bachelor's degree.
That's really, really cool that you mentioned all that because from a student's perspective in your class back then, I would have never thought your journey was that grinded out at all. Like you actually had to grind for your future. And from our point of view, we just think our teachers did everything correctly the first time and there was no, struggle, no obstacles, and they just adulted the correct way. Because usually we see our teachers as like one of the good influences in the world. Because you don't
Right.
just become a teacher if you're a shitty person most of the time, or if you're a certain way, even though we have had bad teachers growing up. I think we all have at least one. But no, like your story is actually pretty cool. Like you didn't get handouts. It was just straight work, work, work.
Well, it's a two-part thing in the sense of the when I married my wife in 2000, I was trying to acclimate into society from the military basically, and it's kind of like if you were like I was on submarines, but if you were a tank driver, what kind of job can I get on the outside after I drove tanks or when I was on submarines? That's a little bit more challenging, unless you are like an aircraft mechanic or something, and that automatically translates to like really good money when you get out. So I kind of came out of the military and into civilian world trying to just get an entry level job at anything and to make money. And really when in 2000 I had a difficult time finding a job, which was very strange because I put in a bunch of applications and I couldn't even get hired or interviewed at Walmart or whatever else. So it was kind of I had adversity for a very strange reason, but it was all for a purpose, I'm sure by the Lord. But I had a difficult time finding a job. But then I found a job, but then it was the right job at the right time. Where I was an assistant manager at a barbecue restaurant. I did have a work ethic, and that was the thing I always took with me. But I was always looking for the next thing to kind of supplement, right? And my wife, she never worked outside the home, so we had our son, and then we had my two stepsons. So we had three boys, and I had a family of five, like immediately, like probably a year after we got married. And we had a family of four when I got married, but a year after we had five, right? And it was definitely really hard. We had one car, and I had it either at work or I had it when I was at college. So when I got home, my wife was like on the front porch, like, "Hey, you're gonna take me somewhere," and I'm like, that's the last thing I want to do right now."
For
Like, I
sure.
just, and she's like, "Well, I've been staying at home this whole time," and so it was like that. Uh, but simple things in life, which were, like we had one car, and for a family this size, it, that was one thing. And then, when I got a little bit more money, I paid for a motorcycle, and that motorcycle was great, but it also had the disadvantages of the pavement being 3 feet away from you, right, going in 70 miles an hour. Like that was kind of a human safety problem. If you get in a little accident, you might die.
Yeah.
You were exposed to the elements of 100 degrees outside, or if it's raining, or if it's hailing, or if it's whatever, and you'd have to dress for it, right?
Hmm.
And if you wore like a little windbreaker, and it wasn't, and your gloves didn't cover like right here, and you got the wind, it would just go right through your whole body. So if it was 30 degrees outside and you're riding 70 miles an hour down the road, that was like -5 degrees temperature. I mean, it was absolutely miserable.
That sounds atrocious.
So then you take things like the car that we did have, the AC went out. So what do? I buy a new car for my wife, or a newer used car for my wife, and then I get her car with no AC.
How fun.
So I'm driving down the road, absolutely exhilarated that I'm driving in a shell of a car down the road because I have a physical structure around me to protect me in case, from bugs hitting me at 80 miles an hour or the elements. And the fact that I have no AC bothers me not at all. Right?
Yeah, just roll the windows down. You'll be all right.
That's it. So the fact that I was able to get in a car and have some structure around me and drive down the road with no AC, roll down the windows, it's all a matter of it's all a matter of your mind, right? And that's really that's how I started, which was basically very poor, worked really hard for a long time, had a lot of sacrifice, had a lot of support, but then graduated in '05 with my bachelor's degree in political science. Believe it or not, I kind of wanted to do kind of what you're doing right now.
Podcasting?
Uh, yeah, which was I love doing talk radio. I used to be on the college radio over at Texas A&M University Kingsville. Had my own political talk show over there for a little bit, but I was trying to figure out how to be the big name and the big, and start my career that way. But it was a little difficult when you're trying to make a living for your family, and you try to go and work at a radio station, you make nothing. Like, you literally like are broke, right? Starting out. And I was like, this is great if you are a kid, right? You're a kid and you're just, I can eat top ramen for a couple years and I'll figure it out, right? This was not conducive to providing, for your family. So had a few like super ambitious ideas in that, which I was either going to do political talk show or a religious, a spiritual talk show about God, or sports. And I love all three of those subjects, and of course I love history. But I couldn't do either. I couldn't do none of them because the platform just wasn't conducive for you know raising a family. So I had to pick something a little bit more, I guess, safer. Something that I could earn a living at, and then work vested interest and start working toward things like health insurance and a steady salary and those type of things, right? And then so what I did was, in 2005, after I graduated, I started working for an armed security company that works out of the naval base in Kingsville. And so they trained us like Al Qaeda was going to infiltrate the Naval Air Station in Kingsville. I mean, they had us do pepper spray. Like, you get pepper sprayed in the face, and you had to do this course of hand to hand combat type of thing, and right, and you practice all that stuff that you learned in law enforcement, right, and at Alice High School with Lonnie Adams.
Rest in peace to Lonnie, by the way. Great guy.
Yeah,
Great
absolutely,
teacher, great person. I have nothing but great things to say about that man.
right. So you learned a lot of stuff, and they compressed all that stuff with us, and then through that security training. And so here I have a bachelor's degree, kind of working security, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I started doing a little research. And then I took my wife over to Popeyes, and we're eating Popeyes in Alice. And I told her, it's like, I have an idea of what I'm gonna do. She's like, okay, good. What are you gonna do? Like, she knows I'm ambitious. She knows I have a good work ethic. And I was like, I'm gonna be a teacher.
Mr. Daniels came up with the idea to be a teacher at a Popeyes in Alice, Texas, America. That is
That
something I
that's
would have
it.
never thought.
Yeah. And her response was that she cried. She was like, she's like, no, we're gonna be poor the rest of our lives, And I
Damn.
said, I said, I said, I said no. I said, I'm gonna get my teaching certificate, and then I'm gonna get my master's degree, at the same time. So I made a decision to get my master's degree before I set foot in the classroom. I didn't even know if I was gonna like the classroom, but I went in the teaching program, and all of it was theory based. And my brain doesn't work on theory; it works on practicality. So rational, logical, this is what you do. This is so. I never set foot in a classroom since 93, right? And now it's 2007.
It's a good amount of time.
Yeah, and things have changed, and I lived in a different part of the country. So I started working on my teaching certificate, and I got enrolled in my master's degree program to get my degree in administrative or educational administration to be a principal. So I already knew that that's what I was going to do. I knew that I could be in management, right? I knew I could do leadership, but I figured that I would have to do, 3, 5 years of teaching.
To build the resume.
Yeah, yeah, because in order to lead teachers, you kind of have to be one, right? So Alice gave me my first opportunity. In fact, which was kind of strange, is that um, I kind of got shunned by Kingsville in 2007, which was weird because I was supposed to go work over there, and for whatever reason that didn't work out, and that was great because Alice was closer anyway, and so it worked. I figured it would be great to be in Kingsville, so that way I could just go to college right there. But to do my master's degree work. But my master's degree was really simple in the sense that it was like you went to class like every Wednesday or every other Wednesday, and they started doing hybrid classes and internet and those kind of things. So, but yeah, basically, got my master's degree in 2009 after a couple years of in working as a teacher. I didn't do everything that I wanted to do as a teacher. I really wanted to coach, but I couldn't. They didn't pay me enough coaching, so I had to work armed security to supplement my income.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a teacher Monday through Friday, and then Friday night I worked armed security, and so I was up. So when I woke up Friday morning at you know 5:40, 5:30 or whatever, I didn't go to sleep until 7 o'clock Saturday. So I stayed up all Friday night working,
Were
and
you
I did
doing
that.
that whenever you were my teacher?
Yeah,
You were doing
yeah,
that
yeah. I
actively.
did. Yeah, I
Wow.
did. I did that for 6 years.
I would have never known. And you never
Yeah,
lacked energy, so that's the most impressive part.
yeah, yeah. It was like, okay, let's go.
That is
Um,
crazy.
yeah, and so then whenever I had an opportunity to work during like spring break and those kind of things, I was always working over at my other job. And over there, I worked 11 hours. I'm sorry, I made $11 an hour. So that wasn't much at all. And then they had so much trouble keeping people, you know, doing armed security that they raised it up to about $18 to $20 an hour, and then people were starting to stay.
That's what I do right now. I do, well, not armed security, but I'm a security supervisor for a Microsoft building here in San Antonio.
Oh, you're still doing that?
I wanted to finish school. I think I have like one more course to take and I can get my associates, but I wanted to get a PhD in psychology to become a kind of like a mental health expert, pretty much. I want to be a psychologist. I want to be a therapist, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just read. I've met a few people who do therapy work, and the stories they say that it starts off like you're helping people, but then it eats you up hearing so much negative trauma every single
Mm-hmm.
day and week that it just gets to you. You know what I mean? It really gets to
Yeah.
you, and then you start feeling guilty for having such a good life compared to what they're having. and then it just eats you up, and then you can't help but like you get closer to these people. Or at least if
Yeah.
you, they say if you're a good therapist, you actually feel something for these people. But I don't know. And then I read so many stories about how therapists end up like committing suicide because it's just too much. Like the horror stories you'll hear that go on in people's lives that you have no idea what happened. It just gets to you, and I'm like, yeah, I don't really know if I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So my whole plan. My mother's not a very big supporter of this. Neither is a lot of my family because they're very traditional.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to escape 9 to 5, and I
Yeah.
want to build a brand. So I got my clothing line that I'm doing, which I'm really gonna push this year. I got this podcast I'm building, the content creation that I'm building, and then I have a separate YouTube channel where I'm doing gym content. So I'm making it to where, okay, so I'm gonna go to the gym, but I'm gonna upload it and make it a thing on the internet, so I'm held accountable. It's like, hey, you haven't uploaded in how many days? Are you even going to the gym? Like people are gonna be like, we're waiting for the next video. What the hell's going on? So it
Mm-hmm.
keeps you like subconsciously locked into that. So thing is, like I'm overweight right now, and in high school I used to be in pretty good shape, but now life has happened. At one point I was 300 pounds. Now I'm 230, and it's like, okay, I know how to do it. It's just a matter of getting the mentality to stay in that mode. So I want to I'm documenting it actually right now to show that it's not hard. It's just you lack the mindset because you're lazy or you give yourself too much excuses.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can document that and make it into a monetized payment system to where I'm getting paid to be active and just I'm getting paid to work out and film myself, like show you how I work out. Why would I not do that? So the whole idea, get paid for content creation eventually. But I'm not doing it to where I'm like these kids doing pranks at a Walmart or
Mm-hmm.
something stupid. Like I'm actually doing real stuff that actually influences people to do better things.
That's
Not to
good.
not to cut you off on your story, but
No,
yeah.
not at all. Have you heard of Michael Thurman?
Oh yeah, yeah. How can you not?
Yeah, I watched him, and it's probably about almost 15, 20 years ago, something like that. And I bought his book, and I don't do a lot of that, but his program works, and it's really really simple because you have three body types, and we fit into one of those, and you find your body type and basically follow the program of what he's telling you to do, and most of it begins in the kitchen.
It's like
It
seventy
comes,
percent of your
yeah,
whole thing is 70%. Unless you have like those fast metabolisms, so
yeah,
it's harder to gain weight, but you can keep slim. And those people have like really good physiques because you're so slim, you're lean as it is. All you gotta do is just build mass on top of that, and yeah, I mean you're golden. Me personally, I don't know what it's called. I'm the body type where I'm like short and stocky. I can keep mass on. That's not hard. If I lift weights in 3 weeks, like I'm already pumped up, like I'm getting big already. It's just a matter of cutting excess weight off. So the frame's there. It's just body fat percentage is too high. So you got to shave
yeah,
that off. And I'm always hungry. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like every 4 hours, I have to eat a meal when I'm lifting because I just get pissed. But then I lose weight fast. Like if I'm working out and lifting, and I don't eat my meals every 4 hours, um, I will drop pounds within days. Like my first week going back to the gym, I lost five or 6 pounds in a week. And I was like, oh, this is badass. This is badass. By the time I got to Sunday, I'm in the shower. I'm starting to like lose consciousness while I'm in the shower, and I'm starting to like fade out a little bit. And then I'm coming back
wow,
in, and I'm like,
yeah,
I know I'm hydrated. That's not the problem. And I've been taking electrolytes. I don't think that's the problem, but it's just I'm burning too much fat at one point, or not fat, but like I'm losing too much weight too fast to
yeah,
where it's like messing up my system.
right,
So I have to find a balance because I was eating rice, tuna, beans, like a lot of protein based stuff with rice as my carbs. And then I would eat red meat with rice again. And then I put like fat free cheese on it to get more protein, less fat. And then I'll throw eggs in there if I need to get the extra protein. Or if I eat a lot of eggs in the morning, I'll crack two and then I do a lot of egg whites just to get a surplus of protein to start the day. But it's not that I'm starving, you know what I mean? I'm eating. It's just the calories have been reduced to a point where it was too much at one time. So
So how many
yeah.
meals are you having a day?
On a good week, when we get a fresh grocery restock, about about 3 to 4. I would eat 3 to 4, but it's because I'm trying to drop weight but not starve at the same time. Because you need protein to help build the mass. I don't know how much my body maintenance is, like just being alive and functioning. I don't know how much I need to burn just to do that because I felt like I was keeping a little under 2,000. I was like about 1,700 to maybe 2,000, if anything, 2,100 to at max. And to me, I was like, that's like a general good point to start. But from what I was feeling internally, that was too low, I guess, from what I'm used to. And it was messing me up for like that first week.
Hmm.
It just hit randomly. I'm in the shower and then bam, I almost like fell in the shower because I just had a little bit of a few seconds where I couldn't focus and fathom where I was. And then I
Yeah.
come back into reality and I'm like, oh shit, that was not a good idea. So the first thing I did, I go to the kitchen, I chug water, I get a pinch of salt, put that on my tongue, down it, just to get some salt in my system in case I'm short on that. And then
Hmm.
I ate some, I forgot what I ate, but I ate a little bit of something just like to get something in my system. And yeah, I ate dinner like an hour later and I felt way better. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how the body can just work the way it does. It could short circuit like a computer at no given warning. It just bam, system overload.
Yeah. You know what? Have you ever tried fasting?
That's how I lost the first 60 pounds. I ate from
Really?
8 a.m. to noon. I had a 4 hour window, and it was an extreme fast. It wasn't. I didn't build up to it. I just 8 a.m. to 12. I had a 4 hour window, and that's when I ate. And I ate a lot. I ain't gonna lie to you. I ate a lot during that 4 hours, and then I
Hmm.
was so full. By the time 8 o'clock hit, I was like, okay, I'm kind of hungry again, but I would ignore it, and then I would go to the gym from 11 at night till about 1 a.m. And then I get home around 2 in the morning and then I go to sleep. And I just kept doing that. And I lost 60 pounds quick. And
Wow.
well, some of it had to do with COVID, I would say, because I was doing that for like a few months and I lost about 30 pounds on my own. And then COVID was around at the time, but I didn't get hit with
Hmm.
it for like the first year. And
Hmm.
then I think when the Delta strain came out, I got hit with it out of nowhere. And I don't even know where I got it from because everyone at my work didn't get it. And I was only at work and the gym at work. So nobody got it but me. And I felt like I was going to die. It was that bad. I literally felt like I'm going to die in my bed. And
Wow.
I've never been that sick or scared in my life. It was something that I can never fathom going through again. But yeah, I was in bed for about 3.5 weeks straight, had no energy. I tried to walk outside just to get air. About 30 seconds in, I was sweating profusely and I was out of breath. It was really insane. I was like, I'm 22, 23 years old, maybe 21 at the time. I don't remember.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is insane. I'm in my 20s and I can't breathe. Like, I can only imagine being older with this. So I ended up getting better, but I didn't eat for about 12 days, I would say. About 12
Wow.
whole days, did not consume no solids, just straight water. And I drink V8 just to get sugar in my system. That way I don't deplete it all.
Hmm.
And I don't know how smart that was, if it was even smart at all, but no one knew what to do apparently. So I was just trying stuff to keep alive. And
Right.
yeah, I think I lost like another close to like 25 pounds during that month and a half I was sick. And yeah, so that was a big credit to that. But then I gained like 15 back quick because as soon as you start eating again, yeah. But I lost it off again, and I've been at 230 for like a while. I've been floating about 230 to 235 for like the past year and a half, 2 years, and it's just a matter of it's mental. I don't know how I
Oh,
did it the first time to
yeah.
get
It's
into
100.
that mind state where I have to just lock in, so to say, and do it. But yeah, I don't know how I did it the first time. I really don't know how because to me it's just so hard to get back into it. Because I know if I fast and I go to the gym, I've had it happen. Results will happen. It's just I don't know. The brain doesn't want to fucking do it.
Right.
It's pretty weird.
You know, I never fasted before in my life,
It's awesome.
and I tried it on December 31st. I had my last meal at 6 in the evening, and then I fasted for 100 hours.
Damn.
And it was January 4th at 10 o'clock. The only reason why, because originally I was going to say January 4th at 6 o'clock. That would have been 96 hours or 4 days. And I was like, okay, then I'll eat. But then I was like, I'm so close to just sleeping through the night, right? Just to go through the night. Well, when I fell asleep, I fell asleep at like 10 o'clock, and then I woke up at 11:30, or something like that, because of a disturbance. Like my AC was on, my window unit was on, where it fluctuates, or whatever you call that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it came back on, and it disrupted my sleep, and then I'm awake. I'm awake, but then I start thinking. I'm thinking about food because I'm hungry. I couldn't stop thinking about food. And I was like, "That's it. I'm breaking my fast." Right. So at 10 o'clock on January 4th, which was happened to be the 100 hours, I got up and I was like, "I'm eating." So I ate a little bit just to kind of satisfy my hunger. But I heard so many good things about fasting, about the health benefits, and I read a little bit about it. But it's between like the about 24 to 72 hours is optimum,
Mm-hmm.
because your body is in a state of starvation, which it varies based on the longer you go, right? So your body starts reacting like, hey, I'm this is not good, like what's going on. And the cells in your body, I think they call them zombie cells, they start attacking all the cells that are not good for your body. So there's like this
Yeah.
internal struggle or fight going on inside your body. And then you're drinking water and you're flushing things out of your thought. You just think about your organs, right? And how they're on in constant like stress, like processing. You eat and then just constantly just shoving stuff down. And you do this for your whole life, right? And then nothing ever gets a break. And that's the thing that really made me think that fasting has got to be incorporated into my life on a normal basis. So I was like, man, I ate all of this food during Thanksgiving. I ate all this food during all this crap during Christmas. And I'm like, I'm going to do a fast, and I'm not kidding. I felt great. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people that suffer from stress and anxiety, like when you are fasting, your mindset is shifted away from whatever. Mostly, I'm not taking into account like trauma, but I'm talking like for the most part, like day to day type of things. Your life is turned to, now I'm hungry, and then I'm not going to eat, and I'm kind of at peace with it. And you do that over a period of 24, 48, 72 hours. That's very humbling. I'm telling you. I mean, there's a reason why this is biblical. I mean, there is something going on with your body, and then also spiritually at the same time. And some people were asking me like, "Oh, so you're doing this for a spiritual reason?" I was like, no.
Just health
No,
being.
actually, I was just wanting to do better physically. But then as I was going through this, I was thinking about the spiritual part of it. And I was thinking about, like, wow, this does give me a different type of focus, right? So
Yeah.
now, I'm gonna put this into my life, like, in a day, in a monthly schedule. So like I've set up where the first and second of the month are going to be my days of fasting. And then when it comes to like spring break, it's going to be, I'm going to do a 100-hour fast. And then when I get to, real stressful part of the end of the school year, probably do a fast, and then probably do another one before school begins, and then of course Thanksgiving and Christmas. So man, I'm so excited about this because I've seen like real results over it. It's gonna be great. I mean, it's gonna be. I've even tapped into the spiritual side of it, like, getting, in prayer, more in prayer and tune with God. But I'm pretty excited that I think he's kind of opened my eyes up to this is something that your body and your mind and your spirit needs to kind of all do in conjunction.
For sure.
So,
I'm actually curious too. Was your faith in God, was it always strong, or did you ever go through parts of your life where you kind of was teeting your way towards it?
oh, I, I was. Yeah, it's been strong, and then I've yo-yoed or roller coastered, I guess you want to call it that. But I've known that. I think what I've really found out is that in spite of my uh, yo-yoing, is that God has never not been there, but I've brought on more undue problems and stress in my life when I've went away from him, and so that I think after being 50 now that I'm 50 years old, I'm like, I can see the back part of my life going, when things were bad, it was usually because I was further away from him and not in prayer, not in a consistent relationship with him, in the sense of reading my Bible and praying on a regular basis. So self-induced is more of my issue, but I've kind of seen that after all this time that he's been faithful, which is amazing.
I actually have a memory of you from high school, and I remember this because it stuck out to me. It stood out to me so bad. At the time when I was in your classroom, I was not a believer. I was not a big atheist, but I was an atheist. I didn't believe in anything. But I remember this stood out to me. We were at a point in geography where you had to. I think the school required you. I remember you saying that you had to do this. It wasn't because you're choosing to do it.
Mm.
You had to briefly go over the history of God and his existence and Jesus Christ. Like, it was just part of history. So you
Mm.
had to cover it. And you're saying, like, I don't want to do this because I don't want to push it on you. It's what I'm being told to do, and we just have to get through this. And I remember it caught my attention because I was like, okay, well, a big reason why I was never open to religion is because I always felt like people were trying to force it down my throat all my life. And it's like, don't tell me about like what I need to do. Like, if I want to venture into that, I'll do it on my own. And so I remember my ears perked up for that lesson. You know what I mean? Very few topics in world history that I actually wanted to listen to, but that was one.
Mm.
And I remember you were going over just, the slideshow, and you're explaining, and, you made it a point that you're a believer. So you were explaining things in more detail than most teachers would have, which was great. And I remember the girl who asked this question or said this comment. I'm not going to say her name, but she was
Mm.
like, how do you even know that's real? It's like, how do you even know? And like, what if he's not real? He's probably not even real. This whole thing. And you were like, oh no, he's real. He's real. And then you wanted to like really go into it, but you were like, I'm on the clock right now. I'm in a school. Like,
Yeah.
I can't preach about this. But you stood on it. Like, no, like, this is a fact. And I was like, interesting. And then the way you handled it, I was like, he's not lecturing and he's not belittling. He's just telling you like it's real, and we're gonna move on. So I was like, that was interesting for me. And yeah.
And that's a good, like, it's good that you brought that up. I always remember when I taught those lessons that I would tell the students, it's like, I am here to teach you, I'm not going to preach to you. So when
Mm-hmm.
when I when I tell you this, it's just that I'm going to tell you from the different religions and their different points of view. But we're going to start with, how many of you are Christian? Raise your hand. And nobody would raise their hand. And I would say, okay, how many of you are Catholic? And the whole class would raise their hand. And I was like, boy, we've got a long way to go.
Yeah. Um, I
The
remember I messaged you years ago. I think this was during the pandemic, and I put out a post that I was saying that I want to tap back into God and the Bible and all that stuff in church, but I don't know where to start. I was like, there's so many different religions, there's so many different Bibles. Like, what's the real one? What's accurate?
Hmm.
And of course, that's just from not being educated at the time, asking a
Right.
question like that. So I remember you were one of the people who commented, and you were just saying like, just start. Really, like, it's not. I think you were trying to explain it without being too detailed on, because I guess the comment section, but you're like, religion's not important, it's your faith. It doesn't matter what religion you're part of, it's just believing in God. That's the end goal, is believing in God.
Yeah.
Because there's no way for us to prove which religion's correct. There's no which way to prove which one's the real one or most accurate. It's really just believe in God and be a good person. That's basically it. Like, avoid sin. That's mainly the big message. Because I've read
Hmm.
some of the Bible this year, as a matter of fact. I read Genesis 1 through, I think, 3 or 4, something like that. And the thing is, when I read the Bible, I have a hard time getting through the whole book because I'm such a critical thinker that when I read something, I'm analyzing it too far. Like, I take too long trying to analyze the chapter. And I got to the point where God created the earth and then he rested, right? And then the Garden of Eden was created, and that's where Adam and Eve came in and all that.
Hmm.
So I was like, so he rested on earth and created the Garden of Eden. So I was like, Eden's on earth. The garden was on earth. Where on earth was the garden located? Where? So I started going on this rabbit hole of trying to find any clue on where it could have been. But obviously
It
that's
the
never gonna
Bible
come up.
the Bible tells us that it was between the Tigris and the Euphrates River. So when you
Okay.
go into modern day Iraq, the Tigris and Euphrates River go from the northwest down to the southeast. So just like diagonal like this. And through that area is where the Garden of Eden is said to have been in the Bible. Now, of course, that's all desert and dried up now, but uh, it does tell us, and a more simplistic way of when sometimes when you're a critical thinker, when your mind starts going, because you want to ask so many questions, is just read it for what it says. So like and on the third day God created, and it was good. And sometimes the Bible is just so, like, it has one little sentence like that, and it was good. It was good. And you'll see those patterns. It was good. Why? Because it came from God.
Yeah.
Why? Because he is good.
And my brain has a hard time accepting it's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Sometimes we do that because we want to ask more questions, and I think the critical thing to understand with the Bible is just imagining that Jesus is on every page, because because the whole Bible is about him. It's not about history. It's not about documentation. It's not about anything other than the history, and about Jesus coming into this world. He created everything, and he came into the world to save everything. And so from Genesis all the way to Revelation is about Jesus. The symbolism of an ox lowing before it goes to get slaughtered, right, is symbolic of Jesus voluntarily giving up his life before he dies. Giving up his life. Everything, from from Leviticus to all the law, to all the rituals, to all the sacrifices, to the perfect, that had to have a perfect animal without blemish, without, it had to be the best. That's Jesus. Everything. So it's not so much about religion as it is about a relationship with God, and that his son Jesus Christ came and died for us so that
Hmm.
we could live again. That's really the whole precept of the Bible. People sometimes get lost with the questions and the doubts and those kind of things, but the Bible is so rich in history and knowledge and uh, that we could ever ask for. It has 40 different authors from different backgrounds, that all say the same thing. I mean,
Just
you know,
worded slightly different, but overall same thing.
yeah, yeah. It's
You know,
just it.
my dad's schizophrenic, and he was always raised in church. So
Mhm.
one day I went to go visit him. This was before he was homeless. He's actually in jail right now. He got in trouble for trespassing. But when I went to visit him when he was in a motel at one point, he had 4 Bibles on his nightstand, like just all open, all highlighted verses. And he was having an episode, I guess, whenever I came into the room. And he was telling me, he's like, Satan's trying to get me. He's like, he started saying God isn't real. And I'm like, what makes you say that? You've always been super in tune with that stuff. And he was showing me the Bibles, and he's like, look, these are all the same verses, but they all say different things. So I was showing it to him, and I was like, oh, well, because this is this edition, that's that edition. They're all different editions. But I was like, if you read them, Dad, they all say the same thing. It's just worded slightly different because they're different people who wrote it. And then he's like, oh, and he starts looking at it more, and he's like, hey, you're kind of right there, right? Yeah, yeah. He's like, okay. And I had to like bring him down to earth a little bit, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty crazy, like just the power, not even the power, but what can create out of just believing in God. And I think Joe Rogan said it. I don't know how he said it word for word, but at one point Joe Rogan was like one of the biggest atheists on the podcasting planet. He was not into that stuff at all. He found any reason to debate it and go against it. But nowadays he's more open to it, and he says, although I'm not going to say I'm strong in faith, I do love the idea of God, because people who believe in God tend to be better people because they're afraid of God. So he's like, religion is actually a good thing, in his opinion now, because over the years he got more mature and learned some things. He's like, people who are afraid of God will act good and do good because they know they're going to get judged one day in their mind. So subconsciously they're doing the right things because of the power of God being real in their mind. And he's like, we need more of that. He's like, honestly, I think the world would be a lot better if people were more in tune with that. So that was a good
yeah,
message.
yeah. It is. I kind of have a mixed bag of feelings, so to speak, with Joe Rogan. I can't quite figure out if he's doing this for to be open minded, so more for his show. Because I think some people have gotten pretty excited that maybe he's going to be converted, and at the other times he's kind of on the fence. It's probably better for his show for him to be, on the fence, so to speak. But at the same time, he doesn't believe in the moon landing, for example, and he's very adamant about that, right?
I'm
But
mixed with that, honestly. I'm half and half because it's a little, I don't know. I've listened to a few people, even at work, and I have a coworker from Africa, and he's like, I don't get how their technology was so damn bad at that point, but yet they went to the moon. And I was like, well, me being critical, I'm like, was it technology to the public that was limited that makes you believe that? Because I
yeah,
think the government and all of them higher powers, I think they get access to everything way before we do. You know what I mean? So
oh
now we
yeah,
have like 12K cameras. I'm sure they have something way better out there, or they have to. There's just no way the government's just not going to have everything cool before we do. So I was like,
yeah,
maybe they did have it at the time. But I told him one thing that made him think a little bit too. I was like, why is it universally a fact that every country agrees that we went to the moon first and not another country? Like, we're one of the ones that are so against our own country doing that, but every other country is like, yeah, America did it first. So it's like, I don't know. But then there's
yeah.
the whole concept of the world is ran by people and things that we will never understand or know.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it's just a thing going on there that's making everyone say one thing, or whatever the case may be, because I'm a big believer that there's a big red button that could just end the world right now if someone were to hit it. Might be a little on the fence there, it might be a little weird, but I truly believe there's a big red button that if
Well, the
someone just
whole
hits, we're done.
well
Humanity is done.
the whole Cold War, and that's really in a theory of mutually assured destruction, which goes back to the 50s and 60s and onward to with nuclear weapons. It's especially between the superpowers of the Soviet Union and the United States, but it is absolutely crazy to think that there's that much power out there. But I do think you're right. We do have access to some buttons like that would completely devastate whole regions in the world. India, Pakistan.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I've been seeing the clips with Gaza right now, and it's just so weird seeing it. Like when I was young, we just saw like little clips on the news of the aftermath, but there's people recording live footage of the bombings going on, and it's not a video game. This is real life, and I don't know. Like when I was in high school, I wouldn't care. It's kind of weird now that I've been sober for so long, and I found God, and I've done my rehab program. Because in high school, I don't know if you knew this, when I was your student, I was severely addicted to drugs. I don't know if that was ever evident or
No,
noticeable.
I had no idea.
I was really bad on drugs, and I would in school. What I would do is not to go off topic, but at home I would take fat burners and I would open them and I would fill it with whatever I had, which was usually cocaine, and I would just fill it up in a pill and then I'd reseal it through this little. I'm not gonna say how I did it because people might take this and actually do it, but
Right.
I would reseal it and yeah, I would take it to school because even if school were to have a metal detector, you wouldn't detect that. There's no way. So I would just take it with me, and I always had it on me. So whenever the drug dog came, I was always super like freaking out. So what I would do sometimes when the drug dog came, I would put my head down and I would take whatever I had and just dry pop it right there because I know if he sniffs my leg, I'm done or comes near me. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's times I was doing that, or there's times I was taking downers. I used to have
How,
Xanax on me all the time.
how did you afford it? Like, how did you come across? Like,
I
how'd
was
you come across
involved.
that?
I was involved with some bad people, and I would do things that I'm not proud of to get that stuff for free. And
Okay.
nothing like weird, like no gay stuff, but um yeah, a lot of theft was going on. And what kids are doing nowadays, like the problem is like burglaries and stuff like that. I was
Okay.
not a very good person back then. But the thing is, this is how I knew my mind was so different, is that I knew from the outside looking in, I look harmless. I did not look like someone that was going to cause problems. So I would use that to my advantage all the time. So I would play a persona to look a certain way towards certain people. That way I would never be even in their minds. Like that doesn't make sense. Adrian wouldn't do that. But
Yeah.
the whole time I'm just playing the game. And that's when I had to realize that I have a mind that's like it's kind of like an actor. Like my mind, that's why my mind works. I'm playing a video game in real life to people, and that's when I knew my mind was weird. So I felt like I had a personality disorder at one point or another. But honestly, just from being on substance abuse since 11 all the way to 19, I think it was just the substances messing with my brain. Like
Hmm.
my whole personality was not genuine. So of course, I had good moments, and a lot of people can have good memories of me, but a lot of people have a lot of bad memories of me because of the things I would do. And I remember one time. Okay, so this is a fun fact. I don't think I can get in trouble for this no more. But there was a story where I was in your office. This is back when you became a principal while I was still in high school, and you called me into your office, and you're like, "Hey, Adrian, this student reported to me that you pulled a knife on him in the lunchroom. Is this true?" And I was like, "No, not at all." I was like, I wouldn't do that. Like we had an altercation, but like I wouldn't do that. Whole time I was like, yeah, like I did that shit. And what I did
Whoa.
is because he was trying to mess with one of my friends that was a girl, and he was being overly sexual, and I was
Oh.
pissed off about that because I've always like as bad as I always had some type of light bulb that said, hey, that shit's not right. So I was super cool with her. So I had a knife in my shoe and I walked up to him and I pulled it out and I put it on his stomach and I threatened him like I will fucking kill you if you ever do that again to someone. And he looked
Wow.
at me like scared and I told him I was like don't test me, bro. Like don't do it. So then I walk away and I used to wear that big Calvin Klein leather jacket all the time. So I put it in my pocket without even seeing. And I went to my friend, I can't say his name obviously, but I went up to him in the bathroom next to the lunch area where the high school is at and I gave it to him, and I was like, "Get rid of this for me, like just get rid of it," because I had a feeling he was gonna snitch. Sure enough, he did. So I was in your office, and
Wow.
yeah, I mean, I probably sold it perfectly that I would never do something like that, but yeah, I was, I was guilty as charged.
Wow.
So rehab's the one that taught me that I have a problem because the drug abuse for so long, especially when you're going through puberty, messes with your brain waves. So they did like some weird scan thing on my head, and they
Hmm.
were asking me questions and they would scan how my brain waves react to certain scenarios. And they basically told me like you are borderline schizoaffective at this point. So
Ah.
when I found out my dad has schizophrenia and his father had it, I was like, "Oh,
Wow.
this is bad. I'm what the kids say cooked now." So I told the doctor, I was like, "Does this mean like I'm fucking crazy? Like I'm gonna go crazy?" And he's like, "No, if you quit your shit, basically." He's like,
Mm.
"You quit alcohol abuse, quit your substance abuse, um, you're still young enough to where your brain can recover."
Did your father and your grandfather suffer from drug and alcohol abuse?
My father did really bad. But he got to the point where he was taking meth and heroin and stuff.
Oh yeah.
I did I did crack one time. That's one thing I did one time. And when I did that, I was like, yeah, I got issues. I'm like I'm 18 years old and I did crack. Like what the fuck?
Wow.
So yeah, and honestly, truthfully, Um, this is how I know God works in funny ways. So God's a very humorous person, so or thing. I don't know if he's considered a person, but a figure. So I was at this point in my life where I was debating on either suicide or the army. I had two options. It's like one, like my life's terrible. I am causing too much problems. I don't know what to do. I'm not doing anything right. So it's either I end it right now, just get rid of myself because I don't know what to do with myself, or I go to the military. So I had a recruiter come to my house when I was a senior, and I was talking to him about it, and I just told him straight up, like, I have this problem. I have a bad drug problem, and I feel like this is the way to fix my life. So he told me, like, well, you can't be dirty and come to the military for one. But he's like, but we will accept you, and like he told me a bunch of stories how it changed people's lives for the better. So I was sitting there, and at this point, I'm like, I didn't end up going. I was like 19 now, and I was like just not knowing what to do with myself. I really didn't know what to do. I was kind of lost. I was like, to me, I was like in a mental limbo. And then I met this random girl, and I had a kid with her. I didn't even know who she was. I was like, I think I knew her for like a month at most, and she came out pregnant, and I was like, fuck, like what do I do? Like I'm in no condition. I was just thinking
Mhm.
about ending myself. Now I'm bringing a child into my like I don't like I'm not fit for this. I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about my dad and I was like I can't be like him even though I'm just like him at this moment in my life. So I was like I have to do something. So I just literally said I'm going to go to rehab. I'm going to do it and if I end up taking myself out later on, at least I could say like I tried to do what I could. Because at that point, I was thinking, well, if I'm his father at the state of mind that I'm in, I'm no good to him. I have no purpose.
Yeah.
So I went to rehab, and sure enough, they told me everything. Like they were very straightforward, and they told me about my dad, like because I told them like, his behavior, and they're like, yeah, he seems a little out there, right? So they told me the schizophrenia thing. So I was like, okay, so I understood it, and I was like, I could still save myself if I just try. So I did, and I got clean, and there was a lot of trial and error when it came to that because I didn't know how to process emotion like at
Hmm.
all. And anytime I felt anything, I was always under a substance. So doing everything sober and then dealing with conflict while sober was so difficult because I used to get into a lot of fights and trouble. And anytime someone pissed me off, it was just fight, just attack that person, whether it was verbally or physically, just attack them. But then when I became sober, like in my heart, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want conflict, but my brain was telling me like, do this, do that. But my heart saying, don't do it. So I was very conflicted, and I would end up getting very angry with myself.
Yeah,
And I was confused. I was mad because I didn't understand myself. So then I had to go back a second time to learn about emotion. Like, how do I function in society again? So it was a lot of trial and error. And at that time, I burned every relationship I had with everybody. So I wasn't really on, I didn't really have anyone there to help me out, nor would anyone understand what I was going through. So, yeah, I did that, and that's how I started becoming a better person, I would say. And now I live very genuine. You know, what you see is what you get, and I don't filter nothing. I don't hold nothing back, and I don't ever do anything with anyone if it's not pure. So,
it's good.
unfortunately, that's left me to where I don't interact with a lot of people, but I think this podcast is a good way to get in that mode of interacting again because it's just a good way to talk. You know what I mean? And I've had a lot of support from people that I've done wrong in life, and they're supporting me and they're following my pages and they're liking and commenting on stuff. And it's like I know in my heart I don't deserve you to forgive me, but I'm grateful that you do. And that's just another example. This whole story is just another example of why I believe God is real, and that's the whole reason why I was even open to accepting God in my life because considering how bad I was getting to how my life, it got super hard, and having a kid with someone I didn't know, a
Hmm.
lot of BS in there. But then I had to dissect it whenever I separated from the mother that she wasn't meant to be part of the end of my story. She was there and she played a role in my life, so she was a part of a chapter. But the
Hmm.
story keeps going. It goes on. That's not the end of your story. It just keeps going on and on and on. So I had to just learn to be grateful for the time period and what it taught me, whether it was good and bad, and just really understand that that was just a moment. And now we're on to a next one, and then life continues to go. And you got to just accept people are chapters sometimes in your book, and sometimes you're not even the main character in your story. You're really not. Sometimes
Yeah.
there's areas where other people are highlighted in the story. So it's been humbling. I had to learn to be humble because I had a God complex at one time. And I also had to learn too that I wasn't as great as I thought I was. Because in high school I had like a lot of like attention from girls and shit, right? But then I started thinking about it. I was like, was I really that charming of a guy, or was just I picking low hanging fruit? Just
Hmm.
girls that anyone could have probably had. And when I really thought about it, I didn't have access to any female at that time that most people in the school didn't have access to. So it wasn't because I was attracting gems. It was just, whatever. And
You're just going with the flow.
yeah, and I thought that gave me some kind of like edge of competition against other guys. I had like a competition, like, oh, I can get more girls than you. I could do this better than you, whatever the case may be. But
Mm.
I was in a competition with my goddamn self. You know what I mean? But
Yeah. Hey, can we take a quick break for a second?
mhm.
All right. All right, I'm back.
Yeah, you're good. But yeah, that was the story. Is just I learned a lot about just life that my perception wasn't always accurate, and I had to humble myself. And learning how to be humble was the biggest thing. But I also had to learn something recently: is just because you're a good person to someone doesn't mean they're going to be a good person to you. And sometimes what you give is not always what you receive. And I had to learn that with a lot of people in my life, and it's kind of frustrating, but
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got to be a good person and not expect anything back and be okay with that.
And so you're the back to your job. You're the head of security.
Hmm.
What? How many people are under you?
At the site I'm located at,
Yeah.
about 15 people total.
So do you have to have pretty much like a clean record in order to do all of that, or is
Hmm.
there okay? So that's amazing because the life that you've lived with, drug use and those kind of things, the odds or the chances of you having a clean record are
Yeah,
not very good.
I was
Like that,
very fortunate because I've been
yeah,
stopped by a few cops in Alice, and I
so
don't know.
you
I
were just
just
always teetering on the brink of, like whatever happens, right? But the fact that you're head of security is really like you are blessed. I mean, very fortunate that you're still able to do that. So that's awesome.
it's definitely crazy because I have been stopped and I've talked my way out of a lot of situations with cops.
Hmm.
So that's how I knew too. Like I'm very quick on the fly with critical thinking, and it's interesting. I wouldn't say I'm smart or I'm the smartest guy, but I've always been good at talking to people. I've always seemed to get my way with people. So now I'm trying to use that in a good way, a genuine way, instead of using it for bad purposes. So it's
That's
it's
good.
humbling. Also too, I didn't understand this from life either. Is that my father is schizoaffective and my son is autistic. So I was trying to. I'm still kind of trying to figure this out in life. But why would God put me in a situation where I have a mentally ill father and a mentally challenged son, and I'm not really all there myself sometimes? So it's like, am I really the best person to handle these scenarios? Like, I don't know. Like, it's pretty confusing, but I try to do my best when it comes to all that. I focus on my son more than anything because, my dad's supposed to be there for me, and I've tried being there for him a few times, but he's been the way he is for so long. He doesn't want to hear nothing. So a lot of my
Yeah.
attention goes towards my son, which I don't really know how to be there for a kid with autism. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how to parent that because
Mhm.
it's my first time dealing with a kid in that situation. But I try to make it work, with being as patient as possible. I still try to treat him like a normal child. Discipline's still a thing. Listening, manners. He might not get it at first, but I always have this thing like I don't care what doctor says what condition he has. He's still a person, and he's going to be a good person. I'm not going to let him just get away with everything because he has a condition. Like I'm not falling for it. I'm just not because he understands. As long as he can understand, he can do right.
Well, the thing is, like with children, there's no rule book, there's no handbook, there's no guide that can lead you through it. But especially with kids that are on the spectrum, autism spectrum or whatever. My son has Asperger's, which is on the form. I guess they're kind of getting rid of that name now, but it's on the autism spectrum of some sort.
Like high functioning, right?
Yeah, and there's it's kind of like with stereotypes, like certain stereotypes in races. You think of stereotypes, they can be good and they can be bad, right? Well, the stereotype for autism is, oh, he likes computers. Oh, he must be smart. Oh, he doesn't like to be around other people, but man, he's really intelligent.
Hmm.
And that's not always the an accurate stereotype, right? When it comes to kids with autism, and my son in particular has a high intelligence, but not all kids in autism that are autistic do in that sense. Or their intelligence might be geared toward another area. But how is that kid going to be going to adapt to the world around him or her? And that's really the struggle with that parents have, is trying to figure out, to make their kid self-sufficient and, productive members of society. But at the same time, what is a productive member of society? You can really get lost into what is important and what does society say is important? How do I want my kid to fit into society? you know, do I really want them to, like, look at society, right? And I kind of like my kid the way my kid is, right? Um,
Hmm.
so there's challenges when it comes to that, and parents raising their kids, in particularly my son, um, interacting with others is a challenge. But I remember my brother telling me one time, um, about my son, and my brother wasn't trying to be disparaging or anything like that, but he doesn't understand what an autistic child is like.
A lot of people
So,
don't.
right. And so if you don't understand, how are you going to, how is what is their perception really how is that really gonna matter, right, in the grand scheme of things? And so I kind of had to explain it to my brother one time. I said, it's not, it is important that we get our artistic children to adapt to society. I mean, that is important. They have to go out into the world, right? To some degree. I said, but at the same time, when we understand our autistic children, we have to understand their world. And their world is much smaller and more significant than the regular world, right? So when I explained it to him that way, it gave him a minute to pause and think about it, right? Because when you are dealt with uh, a hand, say that you have children that are gifted and talented, and they're just phenomenal learners, like my nieces are, for example. That's all that my brother knows. Like, he knows them to be super super fast learners, on point. They do this and this and that, blah blah blah, right? But step outside of that and into a world of an exceptionality with a child. Sometimes they're twice exceptional. Sometimes they have two different challenges, right?
Hmm.
Sometimes it might be mental, it might be physical, it might be both. Um, and so to take somebody who's, to take children that are gifted, and that the parents that raise gifted children, it is completely, alien to them to understand somebody who's on the spectrum,
That's why
or
I'm with my wife right now.
yeah.
She's super, super. She's a teacher, by the way. She's super naturally gifted when it comes to teaching special children. Like
Hmm.
any type of kid with special needs always gravitates towards her. Like naturally, she don't even have to try to get to them. They go to her.
Yeah.
And when she met my son, he automatically went up to her on his own, and he hates new people. He does not like people. So he went up to her on his own, and he just started interacting with her. And I told her, like, that never happens. Like, he's seen my family his whole life, doesn't interact with them. He does not want to be touched by them. The fact that he went up to you, I was like, that to me personally, now that I'm a believer of God, it's like that's one of the biggest signs I could have gotten. Just right there.
Yeah, and I think also that there's, God doesn't do anything on accident. Like, he has a design, he has a reason, he has a design purpose. And so the children that are created, I would say this is for the most part, right? I would say there's 100% logical, rational understanding and reason for that. Now, for the children that are, you know, the exception to that would be, serious, severe cases. I don't understand. I don't understand those cases. But I mean, where the child is in pain or suffering, those kind of things, right? So it's not a carte blanche, paint with a broad brush. This is all children. I don't understand some things, but for the most part, I do understand that God has a purpose for all things, and that all good will come out of those things. And I do believe that. Um, and so with children, especially that are on the autism spectrum, those are a gift, to us to relish, really.
Yep, it took me a long time to comprehend it, but it's not as bad as a few years with the kid like that. It's you start to understand it more. I think that's why it gets frustrating or scary because you don't
Hmm.
understand it in the beginning. And
Right.
I think even when the kid's in his 20s, my kid's in his 20s, I'm probably still not going to understand it, but
Hmm.
I'm gonna have a better understanding of it. And
Right.
I think maybe the whole point of that is just to me to learn how to accept people and have more sympathy and empathy for others. Because
Hmm.
when I was in high school, I could tell you right now, I was not a good person. I would say a lot of crazy things, and I was part of the group that would make fun of other kids, and you know what I mean. But it's because as a young kid in elementary, I was bullied all through elementary, and I was bullied through intermediate school. So when I got to William Adams in high school, the tide shifted, and I would do anything to put the focus on someone else other than myself,
Hmm.
because I'm like, hey, pay attention to them, because if you pay attention to me too long, you might see something I don't want you to see. So
Yeah.
a lot of people who bully people or pick on people, it's out of insecurity, and they got their own issues, and they're projecting. But I
Yeah.
think that's where good role models come into play, because there's been a few teachers who've put me on the side and they've spoke to me, and even to this day, the old guidance counselor from high school, her and I still talked the other day, and she's glad to hear that I'm doing a lot better than I was, because at one point she had to call me into her office and she told me, like, Adrian, like, and she said this word for word, if you don't get your fucking shit together, you're gonna flunk and you're gonna be a loser. And I was like, just I was 18 at the time, sitting in the guidance counselor office and just hearing a grown adult in a teacher setting just talk to me like that. It like really made my eyes big, and I was like, thank you. You know what I mean? I'm grateful that you said this to me, because
Yeah.
most people would sugarcoat it, and I can't stand that. As an adult, I hate employees, I hate bosses, I hate anyone that tries to beat around the bush with me. It's like I'm not sensitive. Just say what you got to say and say it the way it is, and we can move
Yeah.
forward. It's that simple.
Right.
But I don't know. I think everyone's in a state where they don't want to offend nobody no more.
Yeah.
But
True.
I'm actually curious too, from your side of the desk, right? Because you were a teacher. Was there ever a point where you had students where you felt like they had all the potential in the world? It's just you can tell at home or their friend group was holding them back?
You know, since I taught ninth graders, not so much, because I remember judging some ninth graders that were, I mean, not judging, but making a judgment, saying this one's not going to make it. Like, if you cannot do this, how are you going to do this, and how are you going to do that? Right? Like, move on. And I remember, and they had a bad attitude or whatever it was, and I remember being wrong. And this was all privately to myself, right?
Of
I
course.
remember seeing these kids later going, "Oh, you did make it." It was almost like to the point where we bought into, if you do not graduate high school, you are a loser. You will not turn out to be anything, right? And so we kind of as teachers, as educators, we kind of bought into that. Like, yeah, you got to do this. Like, this is super important, which is the whole idea, right? Like, you got to do this, right? But at the same time, I did see some kids that didn't graduate high school and they turned out fine,
Hmm.
and they did okay. Like they got, they did all right. But they were the exception to the rule. Most of them didn't do well, right? That dropped out, and and so I kind of had to eat some humble pie in that regard to say that I knew how they were going to turn out when I didn't really know how they were going to turn out. But over at the high school in ninth grade, like I said earlier, at my high school up in Washington State, it was like we were, wide eyed, and, you know, we didn't know what was going to happen. And over here, it was pretty crazy. Like eighth graders at William Adams, and I mean, they were used to getting, you know, they were used to getting the police over to the campus. I mean, I was like, what? I don't understand how you can be this bad. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand it. I didn't understand how that happened, or like it was allowed, meaning that this was a normal thing,
I,
right?
I
And like,
dated a girl who hit the principal my freshman year. So the student that fought the principal in the cafeteria, that was a girl I was dating at the time.
wow.
Well, not
I
at
mean,
that
that's
time, but a little before that.
that's yeah, that's kind of mind blowing, right? And the granted, I have colleagues that work over there, and they're great. I mean, they do well, and they've done well. And this isn't anything on them. It's just it was a little bit of a culture shock to think that kids would behave so badly. Um, and then they would come up to the ninth grade, and this was just a normal thing. I was like, no, like that's not normal. Like we need to get this straightened out. And unfortunately, there would be this attrition rate. Like basically, ninth grade teachers would teach, and we'll see. Like hopefully we will get however many percentage to the 10th grade. Well, there was a percentage that wouldn't make it to the 10th grade, right? And then we would have a percentage that wouldn't make it to the 10th grade the next year. And it was like now you have a ninth grader who's 16, 17 years old. And then at a certain point, you're going, what are we doing, right? Like this isn't you're getting me again, which is fine. I'll be your teacher again, but what are we doing? Like we need we need something different. And when I remember when I was a teacher, I had kids that didn't like me, and that's perfectly okay. Because guess what? I had kids I didn't like, but I tried not to let them know about it. But that's human nature, right? You're gonna have people that you don't like, and I would have kids that said that I had favorites, and I would look them in the eye and I say, "You're right, I do have favorites," and they would say, "Uh huh, see, I told you." I was like, my favorites are the ones that are respectful and do what I tell them to do. And if you're not my favorite today, you have an opportunity to be my favorite tomorrow. But the opportunity is given to you every day, and the choice is yours. So you can choose to be my favorite, and you can choose to be my favorite if you do what I tell you to do and you're respectful. Those are the conditions.
And it's that simple.
It really is. Uh, and so I had people that didn't like me or didn't care for me, and I mean kids, right? And I was like, feel free to take another, you know, feel free to take another teacher, right? I'm okay with that.
I
But I
don't
would
get
never.
why anyone would not like you as a teacher because you were one of the very few teachers that were actually good at that school. And I don't mean to say that with disrespect to other teachers there, but
Sure,
I mean
but
there are not many teachers who gave a shit like you did.
yeah, I appreciate that. I just tried my best. I do my best, and I realize that I'm not going to get 100% of kids that are going to want me at the second time around as a teacher. And I said, look, if it didn't work the first time, let's not repeat and rinse,
Yeah.
unless you're and say this to the kid, unless your attitude is going to change, then we can give it a shot, right? I have no problem, but why are we going to repeat something if it didn't work? And so that's why if we had a 17-year-old freshman, I I was sitting there going, why are we, why are they still, why are they still in the school? Because you
How did
start
you end
doing,
up here?
yeah, you start to do the math and you go, so at the best case scenario, you're going to be an 18-year-old sophomore
Be
and a
20,
19 year,
21 when you graduate.
right?
Go
I,
get your GED. Go get a job, man.
yeah, yeah, I know. And
Try again in
unfortunately,
college.
right. So I think that was part of that was part of it. Um, but overall, I mean, I loved every aspect of education I've been in. I loved um, you know, the 6 years as a teacher, and then I loved being an assistant principal for 2 years, and then I loved being a principal for 6 years, and now I love being you know, an assist or a superintendent for the last 4 years, and it's all served me well. I like working with people, and I like working with kids and teachers. You know, and to do my, you know, do my absolute best. Um, but I've always said that you know, the dangerous minds, you know, teacher and the, you know, those kind of, they make movies about. I was like, that's not me, right? I'm not going to be that person, right? What is the one where she taught in an impoverished school? You know, I forgot what
Freedom
her name
writers.
was. Yeah, there you go. Right. I mean, those, I tip my hat to those teachers. Like, you started a movement. I mean, great. You know, not everybody is that, right? But I also looked at as freshmen as not only just trying to educate them, but sometimes you're just trying to hold on to them, right? You're just trying to give them an opportunity and say, look, like, you don't believe in yourself, you don't have a very good attitude, you know, you have a lot of problems, you know, just hold on, right? Just hold on. It might turn around for you, right? And so sometimes when we plant we plant trees, we want to watch the fruit grow, and it takes a long time for it to grow. And it's like, you're not you're gonna be spending a lot of time just watching the limbs, waiting for fruit to grow. The fruit didn't grow necessarily my freshman year. It might not even grow until their junior year, but it finally grew in most cases, and then it finally blossomed, and then they were able to move on. But if you don't hold on to them, sometimes in those pivotal years, they'll give up, and you know, they'll give up on themselves, you know. So
I think it goes back to parents because I think my generation, especially, was why the uprise and terrible kids happened, especially ones that would fight teachers. That's pretty wild.
yeah.
Um, I think it's just bad parenting. I think a lot of I think my generation's parents, I think a lot of them just had a lot of trauma from their childhood and they learned very toxic behaviors that they thought were normal and they did that to their kids. They repeated a cycle and you start seeing how broken kids create broken children later on in life.
Yeah.
And it just repeats the cycle. And honestly, I'm not going to sit here and be like my mother was absolutely terrible. You know, she did the best she could and
Mhm.
there's definitely a lot more good times than there is bad ones, but the amount of toxicity that would come from my family, it's it got to a point where I thought that was normal, and I realized later on in life that my family is not the greatest when it comes to how they are with people and their intentions and what they do behind closed doors, especially with the whole judging and it's not just regular judgment, it's like very critical judgment that they do on people, but then when they
Mm.
see the people it's like their best friends. And to me, that's just, I think that's where I adapted at a young age how to play a character. And I had to break that so bad. So now, like, I am who I am full time. Like, I don't change who I am around certain people no more to fit in. Like, it's like, I don't want to fit in. You're going to know me as the guy who's kind of rough around the edges and stands out a little bit. And not because I'm trying to be different, but it's just I'm
Mhm.
not trying to be who you want me to be no more. I'm trying to be myself. And it took me till about 25 to really figure out who I am. It's been a long journey, but like you were saying with the whole blooming thing, I didn't. To me personally, I haven't started blooming until I turned 25, around that time period. But
Yeah.
and I'm not even done growing yet. Like I have so much to make up for on lost time and evolve, and I think that's why I'm trying to do it at a fast pace because a lot of time I wasted throughout my life. But I mean, it's been going great, and I've learned a lot, and I've lost a lot because of boundaries I had to put. Like right now, I'm in a feud with my family because I got tired of their narcissism, so to say, finally, and I took them off my socials. And
Hmm.
it's not that I have a hate towards them. Like I still text them, I still make sure they're okay. You know, some of them aren't replying to me because they're butthurt, but it's like you're gonna let an app, like a friends list on an app, dictate real life. Like this is a screen. It doesn't even exist if you really think about it. Like the way they banned TikTok, right? So if they
Yeah.
ban Facebook, what would happen? Life
Yeah.
continues. Life keeps
Yep.
going. I tell people all the time, social media is a real thing, of course, but social media is not a real place. It's not. So
Hmm.
just because you're not on someone's social media doesn't mean you can't be in their life. I have plenty of people who I talk to every day. I don't have them in all my socials because it's just social media. Who cares? You know, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
But you can't really change people sometimes. They don't want to change. But we are gonna hit around the 2 hour mark, so I'm
Yeah.
gonna go ahead and we're gonna wrap it up here. I do
Okay.
have one thing I want to tell you though that stuck with me the rest of my life that you said, and it stuck with me for a good reason, not a bad. So there was one time I was in your class, and I remember you used to give these packets. It was homework, but you would do it on a packet on a Monday, and you'd be like,
Hmm.
"You have all week to do this." I think you we either turn it in on Fridays or turn it in the next Monday. Like you
Yeah.
have all week, all weekend to do this packet, and it wasn't hard. It really was not hard. It was simple
Hmm.
shit. It's just doing it, and I think that's what the method behind your madness was. It's just who has the drive to just sit there and do it. That
Yeah.
it wasn't difficult stuff. And I remember I would never do my packets. And that would be a big reason why I would fail the class, like, or I would
Yeah.
get borderline about to fail the class because I just wouldn't do the packets. And I remember I was failing your class at one point. So my mom was the type like, why are you failing this guy's class? You always come home and you say this funny story about him, like you like being in his class. So why aren't you doing his work if you like the guy? And I would just tell her straight up, like, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
The whole time I just really didn't care. So I remember she requested a conference with you, right? So you and her called, and I don't remember everything that you said, but I remember this part she told me because I was in the room with her when she was talking to you, and she had you on speaker that way I couldn't lie or whatever.
Hmm.
And you told her straight up like, Mrs. Garcia, your son is extremely smart. He's a sharp kid. He's a good kid in my class. But I'm gonna be very honest with you. He is just very lazy. And you told her kids that are talented but super lazy are just wasting their potential and their whole reason. Like there's no it's people kids like don't all have the same brain function to be good. Some kids it requires a lot of studying and a lot of discipline and a lot of grind to get there. Some
Hmm.
kids just it just clicks and they're able to do it, but they don't
Yeah.
want to do it. And to like you were saying, like to me that's just it's a waste. It's a waste of a gift. And you just basically said like he's talented but lazy. And that became a slogan for Nike on some shirts. So I don't know if you knew that or not,
I want
but
my percentage.
yeah. So I remember I would sit there sometimes and I'd be like, damn, like I'm not the only one who thinks that about myself. Like it's evident that people see that too. So that always sticks with me in the back of my mind sometimes. So funny enough, that little parent teacher conference and just a little bit of honesty that you probably thought wouldn't matter in a few days, that actually stuck with me the rest of my life. And I always think that about myself. Like I don't want to be into that mold no more. I don't want people to be like, oh, this guy, he could have been something, but he's lazy. Like I do not want to be that guy. So thank you for that because I really needed to hear that at one point in my life.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me know that. I remember when I would do my lessons, I try to make them, you know, as interesting as possible and stuff. And there, it wasn't always that way, but always remember you were kind of a sponge for listening and learning but it was always like in the moment,
Yeah.
and then after it's like squirrel, and it's gone to second period or whatever period it was next, and you're like, okay, I gotta move on, right?
Yeah.
But the work that was associated with it had to have been something. Otherwise, I would have just been lecturing the whole time, right? So, but
Yeah.
but no, I appreciate you letting me know that.
My favorite topic you ever taught was World War II. That was one topic. I think I got an A during that semester because I was so interested in World War II. And the Martin Luther King assignment, it was like a project. We had to create on a poster board, we had to draw like a big design and then make like a poster from our MLK or something.
Yeah.
And I drew one and it looked like a cross between MLK and Kanye West. It was pretty funny. It wasn't the greatest, but yeah.
Well,
I actually
remember
put
the assignment.
some. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of teachers that were good that I remember specific things, and a lot of them were pretty bad. There's a few. I won't ever name them because it's the internet, but yeah, just
Right.
karma got them. Especially, I'm not gonna say her name here, but the woman who would sell us barbecue plates for straight A's. Yeah, that was not good on her end. I'm sure everyone knows who that is because she's been doing that since 1990, whatever.
Wow.
She's no longer
That's
there.
yeah.
but
Yeah,
um,
that's funny.
but yeah,
Barbecue plates for straight A's.
we're about to hit the 2 minute mark. So, is there anything you would like to add to end this podcast? A message for the youth, a message to your old students, perhaps, or anything related to that?
Oh, I think just to, to my old students that it was I hope you got a lot out of this podcast through Adrian, and that hope your lives are well, and that to always cling to God and family, and just do the very best that you can in your life, and good luck to y'all.
Very beautiful, beautifully said. So that's the end of the episode, guys. It was great having Mr. Daniels on. I'm sure throughout life we'll probably end up doing this again in the future. As far as your own podcast, I really do think you should start one, and I can actually give you the information on how I started mine. It doesn't take a fancy setup at all, and it's completely easy to use. And to invite a guest, I mean, you saw the process. It's just click,
Yeah,
do it, simple. You can
awesome.
even do it on your own too. It doesn't have to be with a guest, but we'll definitely talk about that in the future because I think you should start one. But
Sounds good.
yeah, guys, that was great having you on, and I hope to have you on in the future. Everyone have a good day.
Okay, take care.